Hello and welcome back to the CertFirst Linux Plus Cert Camp. We're on to the Managing Files, Directories, and Text module. This is a very critical module for understanding many of the functionality inside under the hood in Linux and many other things. So this is our outline. We're going to talk about handling files and directories, how to link files and directories. We're going to look at reading files, how to find information in Linux, and some exam essentials. So in Linux, the old days of Linux, we had to use essentially the GNU Linux shell. The shell is a special interactive utility that allows you to run programs, manage files, and handle processes. So the shell command line interface, which essentially gives you a command prompt, which you can enter text-based commands. These commands are actually programs, and there are thousands and thousands of commands you can do in Linux, but you may only need to use a few of those commands in your day-to-day work. So even if you've seen some of these commands before, likely will not know all of them. There's always going to be some commands you're maybe even using ineffectively. So we're trying to build your command line tool belt. So we're going to talk about the ls command. We're going to talk about the diff utility. We're going to build upon what we've already talked about and use it in later chapters. So files and directories. So files on a Linux system are stored within a single directory structure called a virtual directory. So that virtual directory contains everything from the storage and puts them into a single structure. This essentially is a root directory that is often simply called just root. So one of the first skills for learning the command line is learning how to navigate the folder structure, how to make files, how to make folders, how to copy them, and even how to delete them. So we're going to look at the command for viewing files. So if we want to view files as well as the metadata. Metadata is information that provides extra details about whatever the file is. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to our virtual machine, and we're running the latest version of Ubuntu now. We've upgraded to 20.04, and this is what you're going to typically see when you first install Ubuntu. You can connect accounts to it if you want to, but we're going to go ahead and skip that. They have some what they call live patch now, where you can update, keep your computers more secure, and I'm going to send system info to Canonical just because I want to have that information. Do they want you to track your location? I'll leave that off for right now. And then of course there's the different software we can install. We're not going to do that right this moment. There are some updates that have released since Ubuntu 20.0.4 has come out. We're going to put that off till later. So we're back here in our graphical interface. We're going to hit the three dots, or we can do the shortcut keys, and we're going to open up a terminal. So inside of the terminal, so if we want to run a command as root, we use the sudo command. Right now we're just a regular user. We're going to just use the ls command. Notice if we type the ls command, all we get is the folders and directories. Without any arguments, that essentially is all we're going to get. So the way Linux works, Linux has something called switches. So these switches will allow you to show different things. If you look at the man page, or the manual page for ls, it'll show you ls and then an option and then a file. The option is basically the switch. So anything within the brackets, you're not actually going to type the brackets. You're just going to type one of these commands like -a or -all, or maybe you're going to change the block size. All kinds of things you can do here, but So that's the options, the different options that there are. So you can actually add a directory to the commands end to look at the metadata. So if we say, let's go ahead and Q for quit, and I'm going to type in clear to clear the screen. I'm going to ls the documents directory. And there's no metadata that goes with that. Let's go ahead and change directory, or CD. And this should look very familiar. And if we do ls-la, notice that we have no directories created. These are just dots. These are effectively placeholders. So if you want to find any kind of command in Linux, you can use the manual page. Man is short for manual. So if you didn't know how to change directory, you can type man cd. And some commands, notice, will not have a manual page, and that's okay. But if you give a command with no other arguments, it's just going to display whatever it's supposed to display. So if we do ls, we get there's no directories in here. If I want to change out and go one level down, there we go. I have some directories that are here. If we want to display more, then we're going to use some of the commonly used options. So let's go back over here real quick. So options are called switches, as we've seen. There's another command to do what is known as print working directory, or present working directory, pwd. So if I want to find out what directory I'm in, you can see that I'm currently in the home/CertFirst directory. And if I ls everything in this directory, I have all the folders, plus notice some of these hidden folders that have a period in front of them. That means that they are directories because we can see they have a D in front of this series of bits over here. And it tells us a little bit about who owns it, the date it was created, so on and so forth. So you want to try all the different commands within the ls and pwd. Two commands you definitely want to get right away. So ls-color, you can actually change. You can list all directories with. So if we want to just list directories, we can do that. If we just do ls-a, we'll see that we only have one directory in here. So we can list recursively the directory tree. We can actually sort by file size. We can sort by time and date. There we did it recursively, so we can show the actual tree structure. And if you just type ls and do tab, it'll actually give you other options of commands. So you can quickly see how many different commands there are. If you type it in all caps, notice Linux is case sensitive, and it will not recognize what you typed. So if you do ls-lh, makes it a little bit more readable, a little more cleaner, and it shows you the file size. So the more you experiment with these commands, the better you'll be off for the actual exam. So some distributions by default will include an alias for the ls-l command. So they might make it ll, which in this case I've added it, but this is in the bash rc file, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But an alias is simply a shorter version of the same command. So you could have a much more complicated command, and you can look at all the different possible aliases you have by typing the command alias. Notice I have alias right here. I have some, if I just hit L, it's the same as doing the ls-cf command. If I type LA, it's the same as doing ls-uppercase A. So if I just do LA, notice I get the same result there, or LL, I get this result. So these are all just aliases to get different things. So we can actually, we can change the color. Let's see, always, never. And if we forget, we can do ls-help. So it'll actually tell us how to use the command. Some commands will have, it'll just be -h. Other commands it will be, so we do ls-h. We get that return. So some commands, if you don't know how to use it, if you do it nc-h, and it will give you a syntax. It'll give you some help for that particular command. So that said, so know the ls command, be familiar with it. Well, what about files and directories? So we talked about ll commands. What about the touch command? So the touch command is particularly useful because the touch command will actually allow you to modify timestamps on a particular file. So let's go ahead and use the touch command, and we'll make a new file. We'll call it project1.txt. And notice we now have a project1.txt file. There's nothing in it, that's fine. We can create multiple files. Oops. Simply by using the touch command. And we can actually notice here that we can press the up arrow on our keyboard, and it will cycle through the commands that we've typed. It's because Linux keeps track of something called command history. So everything we've typed gets saved kind of in a buffer of sorts. So if you wanted to create, say, multiple files, you could just do this. Just put them together with a space, and notice we've created multiple files very quickly. So directories are sometimes called folders, and we can handle some things with, we can create single files, multiple files, and each directory is also a special file, and it has a metadata that includes the file name along with an inode number. So then we have the make directory command. The make directory command is very useful in making directories. Let's go ahead and go back over to our virtual machine here. I'm going to clear the screen. I'm going to say make dir projects. And notice we now have a directory called projects, and it's blue colored, and it has certain default permissions because I didn't specify anything. So that's how we make a directory. So we make a directory, type the directory name. And so there's something called absolute directory reference. If you want to find a folder or file in a directory, you have to give it the path. So for example, the example here, home/username/documents. Now if you want to change directory, if you just type in cd with no options, that will bring you to the home directory. Clear the screen. So I'm currently in the CertFirst directory. If I type cd, that's where it brings me. Let me change into the etc directory. And notice when so if I type cd, it brought me straight back home. Let me change into the etc directory. And if I do a man cd, notice there's no manual page for cd. And there's no help file either. So you just have to either know the name of the directory, or you can actually type the command. So sometimes if you have make directory -p, you can create a directory while overriding the parent directory. So make directory -v overrides the notification. So if you wanted a particular directory tree structure, that's when you would use the make directory -p. So let's do a quick example of that. I'll clear the screen. So if I want to change directory home $user desktop. Now notice that $user, that's actually a reference to the variable user. So if I echo $user, that's actually the current user. That's the current user variable. So I could make individual directories on the desktop, for example. I could do it this way. And I could create a directory tree structure that overrides the main directory. So if I wanted to do this, I could do this way, but I would rather do it a much more efficient way. So I have a command to do that. So this is not something you need to know for the exam, but it just gives you an example of the powerful nature of these commands. So I'm going to type in mkdir-p/home. You have to put that slash there, otherwise the command will fail, because it's looking for the absolute path. Home $user desktop CertFirst / curly brace etc /x1 lib usr / curly brace x2 x3 curly brace /bin tmp / curly brace y1 y2 y3 /z. Notice that everything is case sensitive. Now that should create that tree structure for me. Now if I want to use the tree command, it's not installed. I'm going to do an apt-get install, and I need to sudo so I can actually install stuff. So which means basically run as sudo apt-get install tree, and I put in my password, and it'll take a little bit, and then it will actually install it for me. So here we've got our tree structure. So this is an example of building you can do a lot of things with this. Oops. And remember, Linux is case sensitive, and this is our must have fat fingered it because we have an extra character in there. That's okay. So we can do lots of interesting things with directories. So then we have the copy command. The copy command works very similar. We can copy one file into another file. So the copy command, look at the man page. Whoops. Different. So it's in Windows it is copy command, but in Linux it's CP. So source to destination. So you pick your source. Do you want to archive? Do you want to back up? Do you want to link something instead of copying? You can do that. So let's make a test file, and we're going to edit that real quick. You can use any kind of text editor, which we'll get into a little bit later. So Vim is not installed with the new version of Ubuntu. Let's look at but in many cases, Vim will be the default text editor, but it does have VI. So VI is kind of the old school text editor, but generally you'll either have VI or VIM. So we're in the text editor. We're going to go ahead and just edit some text. This is my text file for demonstration purposes. And I'm going to hit the escape button, and I'm going to do Shift : and then right quit. So that's going to write that out to the file. So if I want to copy test into another file, I would use this command, cp test.txt to test2.txt. So let's go ahead and do a ls command, and now we see we have the test2.txt file. And we can actually cat that out to the screen. Cat just returns the value of that to the screen. We can also see that if we go into the text editor, that it's there. So it's a quick way to make a copy of a file if you need to. So we can use the -n, which will not overwrite pre-existing files. We can archive. We can actually copy an entire directory and do it recursively as well. So recursive copy is one that can be uppercase or lowercase. So that's kind of a strange example. So say for example, but it works very much the same way. So let's go back over here, clear the screen. Let's go back to our home directory. And we're going to go ahead and make a directory. We'll call this source. Let's see. And you have to sudo to do it as root. So now we have a source directory. So we're going to copy this source directory to a backup directory. So we'll say copy -r and we'll do /source and we'll say /backup. And there's no I have to sudo. So sudo copy source to /backup. So we just copied it to a backup directory here. So source didn't have anything in it this time. So let's go ahead and change into the CertFirst directory again. So you can see how quickly it can be to get into different areas. So let's go ahead and create a file. And actually we'll use the touch command just to create several files that don't have anything in them. We'll call this test.txt, test1.txt, test2.txt. And we have to sudo. Still not used to sudoing for everything. I don't know why I forget. Alright, there we go. So now we have those files all created. So let's copy. We can just use the up arrow because we're going to copy what's in source into backup. There we go. Just had to get out of the directory. When you're in the directory, it won't let you copy it. So if we go over to our backup directory, and we can see those files are there. So that's a way of copying recursively. So maybe you want to copy just the contents of the directory, not the whole directory itself. So what you would do is you would change this command. So instead of this just source by itself, you would do /star, which would copy that into backup, not the actual folder itself. So if we change into, or if we look at the backup now, we now have the contents of source in the same folder we're currently in. So you see how that works. So now you have a better understanding of the copy command. And you can also, if you issue the command with a verbose, it will actually give you some information about what it's doing. So there's no directory called new. So we're going to go ahead and make that directory. Sudo make directory. There we go. So now we can actually see, cannot copy a directory source into itself. So just keep in mind there's lots of different ways to skin the cat. Just be aware that you want to understand the copy command for the Linux Plus exam. So then there's the move command. So if you want to move a file locally, you want to do mv and then whatever switch you want. So you can have it overwrite or you can do interactive mode. So source and destination. So if we have an individual file and say we wanted to take this test1.txt and we want to move it over to we have to put sudo first for the move command. And now if we go into etc backup, let's just move it to another location because it'll be easier. Sometimes these things can hard to keep track of, so you want to make sure it's always good to have like a text editor or something off to the side before you do these commands. We'll just move it to home, CertFirst, and there's there we go. Now that'll actually work because we have it in the right. So we can see now that our file test1.txt is now in there. Alright. So it's very similar to the copy command, but mv is more for doing individual files. Then we have the ls command. So there's some examples of handling files and folders. So the move command has some commonly used options as well. So you can do the -I mode to make it more interactive. You can do the ls-f. Go ahead and clear the screen. So it'll actually show you All right, now what if we want to move another file? Let's do move -I for interactive. Let's move project 1.txt into the documents folder. And there's project -1. So you can move the file and rename it at the same time. So say we wanted to change the name. So instead of moving it to there, we're going to move it to documents, and then we're going to slash a different name. We'll call it project 1a.txt. Oh, whoops, I'm in the wrong folder. Clear the screen. So if you want to rename an individual file, you can just do it that way without even having to provide the path if you want to rename it in the same directory. So if you're renaming an entire directory, you can do that as well. And so then we have, if we want to copy files over the network to a remote host, we have a file transfer process. So typically it needs to be protected, and you might use something called rsync. So rsync command, option, and then the source and destination. So you can tunnel rsync through SSH, which we'll cover in a later module. But let's look at the rsync command briefly. So rsync option, and then do user at host source destination, or you can pull on from the rsync as well. So the rsync command is similar to the move command. Sometimes rsync will let you do quick copies. So you want to look at the more commonly used rsync options in the table here. If you don't have rsync automatically, you can do apt-get install. And it's currently already installed. So we're going to go ahead and do apt-get update because we have some updates that are coming. Sudo apt-get update. We'll make sure we're on the latest and greatest. We're going to go ahead and jump over to our other virtual machine so you can see CentOS. This is CentOS. It's a very similar install process to Ubuntu, and we're in scaled mode, which if you're running this virtually, this will happen. You can just do do host command times C to go into scaled mode. That way it will update with as you resize the window. So we need to turn on the network. Network is on. Done. We're going to do automatic partitioning like we did before. Done. And for the software, we're going to do server with GUI. And do we want other stuff? Yeah, we want virtualization. We want the FTP server, and we want that'll be good for now. If there's something else we need, we'll go ahead and install it. Alright. Everything is good to go, and we click begin installation. We can give it a root password. Just make sure you write it down. Done. And if you want to create different users, we'll do john.smith. And we'll leave the default, or we'll make a default password. Terrible password, but that's okay. Password fails the dictionary check. It's based on a dictionary word. You have to press done twice. So we could come up with a better password. Definitely want to use good, strong passwords, but for the purposes of the demo, you get the idea. And it's downloading the appropriate installation, and we'll come back to it. So on Red Hat based systems or CentOS, you'll use yum install rsync if it's not there automatically. So you could use the rsync to copy a large file. So the remote sync utility will often display a speed up rating, essentially if you're doing synchronized backups. Then we have the remove command, or the rm command. So rm-i for interactive mode, and then the file name. So let's go back over to our documents folder here. So if we want to remove this project1.txt, there we can go, and now it's gone. So be careful with the remove command, because the remove command can remove files or directories. If you do the -r for the recursive, then it will try and remove all of the folders. If you do the -f, like this command right here with a star, that means it will try to go after everything. So be wary of that command. So let's go ahead and go to our directories here, and let's remove a directory. So we're going to remove the projects directory. In this case, we're going to just sudo f. Is it -f? No, it's not -f. It's so with the remove command, oh, it's -lowercase f. I didn't realize I was typing it in lowercase, or uppercase, I should say. -f. Oh, and that's backwards. So RM is one of the most heavily used deletion tools. Let's do RM -i. So that's some examples of using RM and what you can use it for. You can do recursive mode. So you can do subdirectories if you do the recursive mode. If some files don't exist, you can use the -F for forced. And then you have the remove directory command. So we have rmdir projects. And notice the projects directory is now gone. So RM for removing files and subdirectories, and rmdir for removing directories. Alright, linking files and directories. So linking files and directories is important. It's important to understand the directory structure of your Linux distribution. So we have something called an inode. What does an inode do? So understanding file and directory links is a very vital part of your Linux journey. So you want to, it can be tricky to understand how file links work, and you want to understand the underlying structure. So you have two basic kinds of links. You have a soft link and a hard link. And so the soft link is essentially a symbolic link. The other is a hard link, and we're going to look at the hard link first. So a hard link is a file or directory that has one index node or inode, but at least two different full names. Having a single inode number means that it's a single data file on the file system. Having two or more names means that the file can be accessed in multiple ways. So in this diagram here, we have a hard link that's been created. The hard link has two file names, one inode number, and therefore one file system location regarding on the disk. So it's two file names, but it's physically one actual file. So the hard link allows you to essentially have a pseudo copy of a file without actually copying its data. So this is often used in backups where there's not enough file system space to back up everything. So the data blocks are the important component as well. So your two types of links. Your hard link is your file or directory with the inode number but two different names, and the single inode number means the single file. So here you can see the hard link versus the soft link. So to create the hard link, you're going to use the ln command. So if I have a file, I have project2.txt, so I'm going to use ln project2.txt, and I'm going to give it a new name. We'll call it hardlink project2.txt. And now we see that we have that hardlink project2.txt link there. So if you do ls-i, you can actually see the inode numbers of the individual folders. Notice that project2.txt and hardlink project2 have the same inode number. So if you want to remove the command, you can just type in unlink and include the linked file name as an argument. So you can, if you want to remove that link, you can say unlink hardlink project2.txt. And now if we do ls-i, notice that we no longer have that hardlink inode number. So the soft links have different inode numbers. The hard links will have the same numbers. ls-l command will show all links with a second column value 1, and that link points to the original file. The soft link contains the path to the original file and not the contents. If you remove the soft link, it doesn't affect anything, but when the original file gets removed, the soft link essentially is just stuck there that points out to a non-existing file. A soft link can link to a directory, however. So original files and soft links don't share the same data. They can exist in different directories, and they can even exist in different file systems. But there is the security problem of the dead links or the stale links if a file gets removed. So then we have reading files, which is important. So we have text files, and we have the cat command. So Linux systems have many text files. They can include configuration files, log files, and so on. It's important to understand how to read these files. And there are many different examples we can utilize for this. So we have the cat command, which essentially just cats out the value of something to the screen. So we have a test1.txt file. It's an empty file. So let's go ahead and open it. Just going to put in some data here. Escape. We're going to right quit, and we're going to now cat out that to the screen. Oops. So essentially Linux can have any kind of file name extension. The file extensions don't really matter, but you can actually send this out to the screen. All we did was use the cat command, or the concatenate command. So you can concatenate files to standard output. So you can have it show everything. You can have it be even non-printed characters. So the cat command will simply spit out the entire text file to your screen. There is also another version of cat called bat, which is on GitHub. And I don't believe it's in the repository. Maybe it is. So the bat command will is like cat with wings, so it does other things besides cat. But it's a good example for it's a good extra tool to have. So you can actually cat more than one file out as well. So let's cat project 2, project 3, project 4. And there's nothing in those files, but just know that it works the same way. You can cat the output into let's go ahead and put some text in those files. Alright, now we have some text in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to cat those out to the screen, and we're going to send them to a new file, project-all.txt. And there we go. Now we have a project.all.txt. And notice we can cat out that to the screen, and we'll actually send all of the output to the screen. So we can also add more. So let's say we had another file, call this project5.txt, and we're going to need to go ahead and install Vim because that's starting to annoy me. This is project 5. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to cat that new file into the bottom of that all text file we just created. And we cat that out to the screen. Oh, I actually did that incorrectly. Let's try that one more time. We need to cat out these into that project-all, and we want to use the double angle brackets, or the greater than sign. And so that will actually output it to the bottom of the screen. So if we do the angle brackets there, that will actually send that input and stick it on the bottom of that text file. Notice it put it down here, and it maintained the other files. We can actually use the cat command to copy the contents of a file to another file as well. You can actually cat out to a new file this way as well. So when that's done writing, what that will do, we just created a new file, a new text file from the command line. So once you, basically what I did was I did cat greater than sign new file.txt, and then I typed in some text, and then I hit Control-D to save it. So if you want to use the cat command to number all the files, for example, you can use the -n command, and it will put numbers in front of all of the inputs, or the outputs to the screen. And then, so maybe you only want to display the numbers to the lines that actually have text in them. So you can do that with the cat B command, and it will only show the non-empty lines. So that's the cat command. There are lots of different ways to use cat. We also have the PR command. So the PR command was originally used for printing, but now it's far more useful for displaying a file when you want some special formatting. So you do PR option and then the file name. So let's go back over here. Let me clear the screen. There is a man page, so you can convert text files for printing, but again, probably not as useful. PR -all.txt. And so these are special options that would set this command apart. So with the PR utility, we can display different columns. We can display one file. You can use the -L command. So this one doesn't have a correct number of lines. So if you only want to see what text is in a file, you can do PR-T, and it will show the same kind of text as well. So with the PR command, you can actually display files side by side, and you can use the -M option. And the name of the files. Oh, there's no project 1, just project 2 and 3. I guess I need to create a project 1. And notice it displayed those two files side by side. So if you need to do like a side-by-side comparison of files, the PR is a great way to do it. So there is the paste command. The paste command will allow you to merge lines of files. So what if you want to read portions of the file? You want to use the grep command. So if you're dealing with a large file, like say a log file for example, and the grep utility will help you find the lines that contain certain strings. So we'll cover this in more detail, but it's definitely useful for finding information. So you have grep, then you have options, the pattern that you want to find, and then the file. So say we wanted to look for grep, root, and etc password. That will return us the value of root or any occurrences of root in that etc password file. What about grep etc in root? So etc is actually a directory. So you can only use grep with files. So what do we have here? We have home, so if we don't find it, we won't get any returns to the screen. So let's look at the man page for grep really quickly. So you have grep, egrep, fgrep, so there's lots of different ways. Grep will search for patterns in files, and the fgrep and the egrep or rgrep work similarly, but they have been deprecated. So you can display the version number, you can look for regular expressions, you can list files that have matches. Usually the nice thing at the bottom of the man page, usually it'll have examples. Now not all man pages will have examples, but a good number of them will. So grep is a very powerful tool. So this following example outputs the location of any line containing F and ending in C within all files in the current directory, whose names contain G and end in H. So notice there's a whole group of regular expressions here. So you can use grep with the word file name. Then we have the head utility. So head works very much similar. So the head works similar to grep. So the head will output the first part of the file. So if we do head and we do var/log syslog, this will output the first part of the system log, for example. Or maybe we want head etsy password. It'll output the first part of the file. You can also override with -n if you want a certain number of lines. So the default behavior is only 10. So what if we want to do 20? Oops. So we get more information. So you can combine with other variants to get more results. So if you eliminate the end and do the just put the number, you pretty much get the same behavior. So if I do head, I'll go ahead and clear the screen so it's a little bit easier. Head-2 Etsy password, I get the first 2 lines, which is the same as if I had typed in N2. So just a little distinction there with the head command. So then we have the tail command, which is similar to the head command. So the tail command has tail option file and then the file name. So if we want to look at the last part, it's a great command for looking at the system log or the access log of something, and you only want to see the latest and greatest information very quickly. So if you don't give it any options, you can actually override tail with the same thing as well. You can tell it to spit out more options. So I gave it 20 lines that time. So it only show the last 10 lines. So if you add a plus sign in front of the argument, the tail will automatically start displaying the text line starting at the line number. So let's say we do tail, clear the screen, tail -n plus 42, because we want to go to line 42 if there's even that many lines. So it'll go to line 42 of that particular directory. So you can do tail -f to follow the log file as well. So you'll see a few recent log entries immediately with the -f command. But if you're ending your monitoring session, you can also do it with the journal control command. So you'll have to hit Control-C, because notice it's going to show, it's not going to back out to a command prompt. Journal control -f journal. So this is not actually a journal file. So but again, you can see how it would work. So some log files have been replaced on certain Linux distributions, and they've been replaced by the journal daemon. So journal control queries the contents of the systemd journal service. So we can also tail a specific number of bytes for log file monitoring as well. So the journal control -follow command can read through large files using a pager. The two of the most commonly used pages are the more and less utilities. More will go one page at a time. But you can't move backwards. So by default, Linux uses less than its page. So if you want to find the differences in a file, you can do diff file 1 and file 2. So let's clear this. So I want diff of project 2 and project 3. And there it shows the differences. So you can make comparisons line by line with the diff command. So it's commonly used options. You can use the -q command to simply see what differences exist. That they actually are different. So you have the which command to locate which file. So which diff, it'll tell you where diff is. So which shells, which so you can type in different things to using the which command to find files quickly. Then you have the unalias command. So unalias, we talked about aliases. If you have, so right now I have LL as the alias for ls-l. So if I want to unalias, LL will no longer do what it was doing before. So ls-la. So if I still have it set to output. So if I unalias LA, it will no longer work. And I'll have to type the full command to get it to do what I want it to do. So the unalias command is definitely worth your time if you want to unalias an individual command without having to go into your bash file. So the where is command. Let's look at the where is command. Where is diff? Where is tail? So we can see where actually tail maps to. So the where is command is very useful as well. Then we have the locate command, which is super fast and easy to use. So locate command may not be installed on all distros. So locate is not installed. So you have to install on the newest version of Ubuntu. And there you go. Sudo apt-get install mlocate, and now we'll be able to type in locate in the prompt here as soon as it finishes installing. So it's basically locate file name. You might have to update the database periodically with locate. So locate command with a pattern can be tricky. You can just add the asterisk or a question mark to the file name to try and locate different arguments. If you don't enter any wildcards, the locate command will add in its own wildcards to search. So we now have the locate command. So if we wanted to do star ASSWD star, it's going to find everything that has that particular So everything that has project, the first 4 letters, and then everything else after as wildcard is coming back. So you can put in wildcards to make it easier to search on different patterns. If you do locate with a -B, it's going to show you all the different directories. So if you don't have permission to review the directory's contents, the locate command will not show files that match the pattern in that directory. So the locate command becomes difficult because of what's known as file globbing, and it's the way in which it searches based on the quote marks in the directory. So file globbing is, by default, it occurs when you use wildcards. So if you don't enter any wildcards, the locate command will add them by default. So if the file is newly created, locate may not find it. Then we have the find command. Notice we just add the locate command. So we use the find command to find what we need to be able to find. So when you need to find files based on metadata, you'll need to use the find command because it's more complex and can find you more information more deeply into the file. It can query recursively. So if you do, for example, the find command was something like this: find period dash max depth equals 2. There we go. So it actually did try to locate in the directory. So it's looking for files with a .txt extension. You can also use the find command to audit permissions on a server. You can do lots of different things with it. So you can find files by permissions, users, groups, file date, time, size, etc. So being able to effectively and use the right commands to shell to find information is vital for your daily job. It allows you to solve problems, manage files, gather information, look at text files, and so on. So the purpose here was to improve the tools that you have knowledge of in Linux. So not only will this help you in your day-to-day job, but it also help you successfully pass the CompTIA exam. So we talked about handling files and directories. We talked about linking files and directories, hard links and soft links. We looked at reading files. We looked at finding information, the find, the locate commands. We looked at grep. So for the exam, you're going to need to be able to explain basic commands for handling files and directories. Being able to move files, copy files, delete files, and for viewing files. You're going to need to know the ls command, the touch command, the make directory command, how to remove directory. You want to be able to use the mv command, the move command. You want to use the copy command. So if the directory is empty, you can delete it with the rmdir, but if you're using the directories that are full of files, you'll want to use the rm-r. And you want to make sure you're removing the correct files. You can do the rm-i for interactive mode. You also want to be able to describe the structures and commands involved in linking files. Linking files is rather easy to do with the ln command, but it's important for you to describe the underlying link structure. Hard linked files share the same inode. Soft link files do not. Soft links or symbolic links can be broken if the file is removed. You also want to be able to summarize various utilities that can be employed to read text files and describe how to find information on your Linux system. Don't forget the find and grep commands. Remember the whereas command, the diff command to be able to compare two files very quickly. These will serve you very well. So we have one review question. You're using the ls command to look at a directory file's metadata, but keep seeing the metadata for the files within it instead. What command will rectify the situation? And we learned about the commands to move the actual metadata. So, and that is the end of the module. I appreciate your attention. We'll see you guys back in the next module. We're going to talk about being able to search and analyze text files.